Despite Donald Trump's daily claims, it is now clear with evidence that the turning point in Operation Sindoor, the reason that Pakistan asked for a ceasefire is because of India's military triumph, in particular, the damage that India was able to inflict to air bases in Pakistan. More on that in a moment. Defense Minister Rajnath Singh in the Kashmir Valley has asked whether nuclear weapons are safe in the hands of a rogue nation, quote unquote, like Pakistan. He is asking for the IAEA to oversee, to supervise how Pakistan manages its nuclear weapons. I'm Barkha Dutt. You're with the Mojo Story. Our focus today continues to be on the turning point in Operation Sindoor. We now know from satellite images that have been released and finally been acknowledged in the Western media that India's air power was able to inflict serious damage to Pakistan's air bases, including Pakistan's fear that India could decapitate its nuclear facilities. This seems increasingly clear from empirical knowledge, empirical evidence, although India has categorically denied targeting Kirana Hills. But now many leading military experts have come forth with evidence, with their analysis on what actually happened, how this war turned, and why Pakistan asked for a ceasefire. And no, it had nothing to do with Donald Trump and his both-sidism or drawing an equivalence between India and Pakistan. I want to welcome to the program our very special newsmaker today. Tom Cooper is the world's foremost air warfare expert and military historian. He's the author of more than 50 books, co-author, I should say, of more than 50 books on military history, as well as the author of 1,000 articles. So he's really a very, very impeccable, well-respected voice all over the world. He joins us today from Austria. I have read his Substack with interest. I urge all of you to read it because it has an extremely clinical, objective analysis of how Operation Sindoor turned. Tom, thank you so much for your time. I want to start by asking you to talk about how your analysis actually ends on your Substack. You say that this was a clear-cut victory for India. Pakistan was left with nothing to defend itself or to retaliate with. I want you to elaborate. We now have videos released officially by the Indian military, but also satellite images available for the world to examine that actually buttress the argument that you have made that the air bases, whether Noor Khan, Rahim Yar Khan, Sargodha, Jacobabad, a whole slew of them, the damage that they faced, whether it was a runway demolished, whether it was a hangar demolished, whether it was a aircraft burnt. Talk a little bit about this phrase that you use, clear-cut victory for India.
Thank you very much for inviting me. It's very nice to be with you. And particular thanks for all the attention on my blog posts. I must admit I'm deeply humbled by all of this. To answer your question, it is comparable to a game of chess. And imagine one player defeating the other in a matter of, let's say, 10 or 12 moves. Most of figures are still on the board, but the queen is paralyzed, and even if the winning side has lost, perhaps, we don't know for sure, more figures, eventually doesn't matter. The outcome is absolutely clear. One side has won, the other is defeated, and this is what has happened here. And the severity of this realization is something that obviously majority of Pakistanis cannot even comprehend, while the Westerners are, well, with exception of few politicians, silent, because this was such a clear demonstration of such an unexpected yet clear demonstration of Indian military prowess. The more information I'm receiving, the more even I'm stunned what have they managed to achieve. For example, you are currently showing Noor Khan Air Base satellite photographs. This was a trailer-mounted command center, very advanced command center, developed in cooperation between Turkey and Pakistan. And you see that this is completely shattered. which means there must have been dozens of casualties just in case of this one attack. And this is a very advanced, very sophisticated system, which was in the process of integration with the Pakistani air defense system. And this is also answering the question of how did India manage this? India didn't shoot everywhere and didn't blast, thousands of missiles at Pakistan, like Pakistan attempted to do with India. But it was striking very specific selected points of interest at Pakistani air bases. Air bases are principally extremely fortified facilities, military facilities. It is very hard to completely obliterate them, to destroy them completely. So what India did instead was to target really specific, almost windows and ventilation vents, such targets, this kind of targets, And in this case, I said, this was a trailer, 2 trailers actually of a command center with numbers of computers inside, dozens of personnel working with them, generators around them, providing electricity and so on. And it was smashed to pieces. And this is also answering why could India do this? Because it focused on selected weak spots in the Pakistani defenses, especially Pakistani air defenses, and through striking and hitting these weak spots, it has rendered the rest of the system useless, or at least weakened enough for India to have more or less free hand what to strike and where to strike. What is also surprising is this Pakistani air defense system, integrated air defense system, was so advanced. It was assessed as one of the best in the world. And I must correct even my assessments of it, because it turned out no matter what kind of advanced equipment Pakistanis have, whether received as donations or bought, who knows with what money, because country is bankrupt, it didn't work. It didn't work together. They have received very advanced, I said, command centers. Then you have advanced US radars, TPS-77. Then you have Chinese-made HQ-9, HQ-16 long-range air defense missiles. And that in addition to an already large air force equipped with F-16s, with GF-17s, with J-10s, in addition to a large number of older aircraft. So they have got lots of toys, so to say, to play the game, and they have still been defeated to a degree which is really surprising. And
much of this is China supplied weaponry. So in a way, India has taken on China supplied weaponry, and Pakistan has not been able to succeed with it. So that's also a very important takeaway.
It is an important takeaway, but one should keep in mind that China has better weapons than what it is supplying to Pakistan. Pakistan simply cannot afford better weapons than what it has got. Still, the PL-15 is no joke. This weapon, in cooperation with Saab 2000 AWACS aircraft of the Pakistani Air Force, is a deadly combination. And this obviously took Indian Air Force a surprise. But on the other hand, I said, both the Air Force, the Armed Forces Command, and even and this is particularly surprising, after decades of watching, India playing the good guy and a nice guy on the international scene, switch the strategy for 180 degrees, so much so the Pakistanis are now complaining that India is a rogue nation all of a sudden, because kind of how could they are targeting our nuclear weapon storage facilities. Well, the Pakistanis have themselves imposed red lines like the Indus Water Treaty, like blockade of Karachi or economy, or strikes on such facilities. And Indian armed forces have reached a position, or established themselves in a position through strikes on Pakistan, where they are dictating what and how is happening. And that is what forced Pakistan to demand or sound ceasefire, which hasn't happened actually since 1971. So
yeah,
it is very, very it is striking development, striking series of developments indicating very methodical, very systematic approach by the Indian armed forces, and also very clever management by the government. You see also in the aftermath of all of this, what Prime Minister Modi has said, that he is not going to negotiate with terrorists. So, this is such a stance it is indicative of self-confidence, of superiority. Absolutely new for India, we've heard lots of politicians including Mr. Modi, making strong statements, but this is now confirmed by military superiority, and this is something absolutely unusual to Pakistanis. They are in deep shock over what has happened to them.
Right. Pakistan is indeed in deep shock, Tom. And one of the things that they tried to do was to till all of this evidence was, placed in the public domain and accessed by experts like you. They tried to feed a bunch of lies, and I think some of those exaggerations are now being called out by neutral experts. Yeah. My question to you is on the nuclear question. And I ask you this because the Prime Minister, Modi, in his speech said that India would no longer accept nuclear blackmail. Yep. And what has typically happened in the past is that Pakistan has believed that it can inflict terrorism on India because India's options under the nuclear threshold are limited. Yep. With Operation Sindoor, I think India has demonstrated that there can and will be kinetic action under the nuclear threshold. Now, my question to you is, I'm going to read out a sentence from your Substack where you talk about, what happened at Kirana Hills, which is near the Sargodha Air Base. Mm-hmm. India at its briefing said, almost humorously, the Air Marshal said, "Oh, we didn't know there were any nuclear facilities at Kirana Hills," and he chuckled, and then he said, "This was not on our list of targets," right? Yeah. You write in your Substack, somebody or something blew up the entrance to the nuclear storage site at the Sargodha complex. You also go on to say that Pakistan clearly reached a point in this operation that it could not even protect its own nuclear weapons. Mm-hmm. And that's the time it goes into a tailspin, possibly reaches out to the Americans. The Americans then say, oh my God, maybe there's Trump starts making his comments about, oh, this is so dangerous, etc. And the Pakistan DGMO then calls India. I want you to talk about what your assessment is of what actually happened, in regard to the gates, as you have said. You have said that the gates of the entrance to the nuclear storage site at the Sargodha complex was hit.
Yes. Well, for me, the first signs of trouble in Islamabad, as I call it, appeared already on 8th of May. This was in the aftermath of the Indian UAV strikes and missile strikes on Pakistani air defense system. All of a sudden, you had lots of media reports in style of, Turkey is rushing to Pakistan's aid and it is siding with Pakistan and United Arab Emirates, and Al Jazeera is publishing this, in favor of Pakistan and that. And all of a sudden, the entire media narrative changed in Islamabad, and not only in Islamabad, but in Turkey as well and several other countries. So why is this necessary if everything is okay? Just a day before they were all, happy about shooting down or claiming to have shot down so many Indian Air Force aircraft. But now all of a sudden, what do you need? Ascertaining the population that Pakistan is supported by Turkey, by Azerbaijan, and who knows who else. Mm. So this was the first sign for me that something is not okay. Then I saw to the social media, are there indications that something is going wrong? And then, it took 24 hours or even more to realize, okay, something is going very badly wrong. When you see Indian Harop UAVs striking HQ-9 surface-to-air missile system de facto inside Lahore, then it is clear that Pakistani air defenses are not working the way they should. And then the peak of all of this was this video, you are currently showing it, where you see strikes at the entrances to the underground nuclear storage facility. Okay, let's say this is supposed to be underground nuclear storage facility. I mean, I don't have documentation that would say it is. But this hill that was the side of which was hit. This is the center of missile garrison, one of the biggest missile garrisons in Pakistan. It's a huge military facility about, I don't recall, 7 or 10 kilometers south of Sargodha or Mushaf Air Base of the Pakistani Air Force. So there are over 40, if I counted them correctly, over 40 hardened shelters for ballistic missiles to the Pakistani armed forces. And then on its northwestern side, there are these two entrances into underground facilities. Now, why do you build such an underground facility inside such a complex? You do not do that in order to grow vegetables or any other kind of whatever, but you are doing this in order to store your nuclear warheads. Why? Because that way you only need to pull them out of that facility, bring them 1 kilometer further to the missiles, install them, and fire the missiles. In this case, this would be on India. So India said it didn't strike this and didn't know it is that it is that way. As
Well,
you
India,
said, I also consider
India
this
said it did not
sarcasm.
target. India said it did not target.
Yeah, I mean, I also meanwhile consider this for sarcasm. Why?
Yeah.
Because there is an agreement according to which Pakistan has to inform India, and India has to inform Pakistan as well about their nuclear facilities, so they wouldn't hit or wouldn't target such objects in the case of war. But Pakistan never declared this facility, these two entrances, that this is some kind of nuclear storage site. So Pakistan lied, and therefore Air Marshal said, well, we didn't know that it is there, we didn't target it. On the other hand, it is absolutely sure, even before I figured out that this is sarcasm, the Pakistanis wouldn't shoot at such facility. And I said, after decades of studying Indian military sciences and the way the Indian military commanders are commanding, they are conservative, they are not reluctant, but overcautious. They do not shoot randomly around the place. And it was obvious in this operation even more, so they are targeting only very, very, very specific, very selected points inside Pakistan. Not everything, not everywhere. So it does not happen by accident that they are striking this place. And if they are doing so, then the conclusion is on hand. They are feeling safe enough to say, Pakistan, whatever we hit, even if the strike fails, Pakistan can't hit back up on us. So we are safe from this Pakistani nuclear retaliation. So this, as I said, is then leading to the conclusion, clear-cut victory, game over for Pakistan. And just, was it 1 or 2 hours later, there was this call via the hotline to New Delhi, and Pakistan sounded for ceasefire, which, by the way, New Delhi didn't really accept. It accepted to stop shooting at Pakistan, but it didn't accept a ceasefire.
That's right.
Pakistan also didn't make any. It was not in a position to make any kind of demands in regards of the Indus Water Treaty or I said targeting of such facilities. So this is such a clear case; it cannot be clearer,
So you feel that when Air Marshal Bharti in his briefing laughed and said, oh, we didn't, thank you for telling us, we didn't know there was a nuclear storage facility at Kirana Hills. He was clearly being sarcastic. And it is your best estimation that indeed India's missiles did hit the entrance of a nuclear storage facility near or in the Sargodha complex.
Yes, and I can explain you this. It is making perfect sense because the facility itself is deep under the hill. So striking it, you need lots of high explosives, a very hefty, big weapon that is penetrating who knows how many meters deep under the ground. You don't need this if you can hit the entrances. Why? You block them. And then whatever is inside cannot be pulled out. Of course, the Pakistanis are certainly already hard at work since how many days? Meanwhile, 5 days. Unblocking these entrances, and perhaps they have reopened them. We don't know. If usually such facilities have huge doors, sliding doors made of concrete and steel and similar materials, which are very hard to penetrate. These are several meters thick. And when you close these doors, it is very hard to open them or to close them. Actually, you need extra engines for this. So perhaps Indians have targeted such engines, or at least sought for the ways to block these entrances, to block these doors, so Pakistanis cannot open them. So there is going to be a need for lots of heavy engineering equipment to reopen these facilities and get inside or out. So I said, this is making the situation so clear. If I haven't experienced this, well, actually since 1991 during the Second Persian Gulf War or Operation Desert Storm, when the US-led coalition defeated Iraq. So there is nothing comparable to this.
Yeah. Tom, some military experts here, after India's denial and then juxtaposing it with the kind of videos and satellite images we're seeing on our screen, some people argued that perhaps Pakistan was trying to stop the Indian missiles from coming, and while spoofing them using their Chinese weaponry, perhaps that's how this fell near Kirana Hills. Do you agree with that, or do you actually think that the entrance to the storage facility was targeted?
I mean, this is geolocated video. So, okay, let's imagine now there is a Brahmos underway high in the sky at Mach 3, or there is a low-flying Scalp EG released by Rafale, and then it gets hit, and by pure accident, it crashes straight into the entrance. I mean, this is worse than lottery, excuse me for expression. This would be such an accident I cannot describe. It's easier to predict something else than this. This is, excuse me, but this is unlikely to happen. By all respect for whoever expressed such opinions or conclusions, but this is so unlikely to happen. I cannot say. I mean,
so what do you think has happened? You think
I
basically
think India has intentionally targeted the entrances, and this is something. Look, when you are in doubt, the simplest explanation is usually the right one in 90% of cases, and the simplest explanation is that India has targeted the entrances. Makes absolute sense, in regards of military aims. You block the entrances, and Pakistanis can't use whatever is inside. Period. That's it. You don't need anything more.
And I do want to ask you, do you think that this, along with the airbase, was the turning point? And one of the things you said was that Pakistan could not even protect its own nuclear weapons once the entrance to the storage facilities had been hit.
Yes. Actual turning point was the decision in New Delhi, probably taken sometimes on 7th of May. Okay, we have attacked Pakistani terror bases, but they do not accept that this is that we are just aiming for terror bases. They are striking at India with all their UAVs and artillery rockets and even ballistic missiles and so on. Okay, if you gentlemen in Islamabad don't understand any other language, then now we are going all out. This is not really all out. India could hit much harder than it did. But it hit hard enough to disable large parts of the Pakistani integrated air defense system. That was the next turning point. This came really as a surprise, because one would expect, this Chinese HQ-9, HQ-16 and similar systems that they've prized, they can shut down ballistic missiles, they can shut down incoming low-flying missiles, kind of lords of war, which can do everything, they are shooting down whatever comes their way. And, well, it turned out they can't. I really scrounged yesterday the internet, deeply into Pakistani social media, into Chinese social media, whatever, and there is no trace for the Pakistanis to have shot down more than one Scalp EG and perhaps one Brahmos. So you have a super duper integrated air defense system, and it has shot down one or two out of hundreds of Indian land attack missiles. Something is obviously not correct in regards of what is Pakistan doing with these systems. The systems might be excellent, but the way Pakistanis have deployed them and they have used them is simply, led to a defeat. So it's similar with Pakistani strikes into India. Hundreds of UAVs, hundreds of artillery rockets, and several ballistic missiles. And this was another turning point, turning point 3 or even actually 2. The Indian integrated air defense system has smashed these strikes. I mean, it certainly didn't shut down everything that came that Pakistanis have fired into India, but it shot down the mass of UAVs, of artillery rockets and ballistic missiles, and that's the point. Which means that Pakistan was denied even this conventional capability to strike back upon India. Whatever it shoot at India, it didn't work.
Yeah.
They have then claimed destruction of Adhampur air base, and what is the other name? And several other Indian air bases.
They claimed Adhampur and I think the S-400 and then Udhampur and so on.
Exactly.
Yes.
Thank you. So okay, let's say now they have taken out 1 battalion, theoretically, of S-400s. India has 5 regiments of S-400s, and each regiment has 5 or 6 battalions. So what does it mean, even if they would have destroyed 1 S-400 battalion? Nothing. Because India still has so many of them that it can continue defending itself effectively. Adhampur, we have seen Prime Minister Modi arriving at the airbase. Obviously, the airbase is intact, so this is also a story. Sure, there were also casualties, Indian casualties, because again, some of UAVs and some of the rockets came through, were not shot down by Indian air defenses, but these were so few that in grand total, it made no difference. It just went like this. And at some point in time, one should keep in mind, Pakistan is bankrupt. It cannot afford, dozens of thousands of UAVs and artillery rockets and so on. So the problem is, from Pakistani point of view, that their stocks, especially of UAVs, were too low. And you could track on Flight Radar 24 and similar websites, the flight of Pakistani transport aircraft to Turkey. Obviously, they sent an aircraft to Turkey to pick up more drones. Well, but it was still not enough. Then you have shutdowns of Turkish-made Anka observation UAVs, which are flying high, slow, which are stealthy, and so on. Nope, shot down. Pakistani ballistic missile intercepted, shot down, and so on and so on. What kind of weaponry? Indian weaponry. This is also important. You have most successful air defense system in India was Akash, which is own design, own production. Not S-400. S-400 is prized and so on, but actually the most important was Akash, plus Barak 8, which is made in cooperation with Israel. But what also came as a big surprise, this really took me by surprise, this was the Indian capability to defend itself against drones. These are slow objects, and because they are so slow and small, they are very hard to detect with the radar. You need specially calibrated radars in order to detect and track UAVs. All of a sudden, India is shooting them down in droves. And this Indian development of counter UAV capabilities, this passed absolutely unnoticed outside of India. And it's really come. All of a sudden, there's a system. Look, they're shooting at them. They're shooting them. Boom, 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 boom. 4 or 5 at once almost. So there's lots of capability that has India managed to develop over the last several years, obviously, and that remained hidden even from Pakistan, not to talk about wider public outside of India. It's actually a shame that a lot of this capability is not paid attention by the West. So yesterday evening, I went through just to check what are the other authors or analysts writing. They are silent about India. They fell since 10th of May. They're all, look, squirrel. Let's talk about something else.
Yeah, that's because they had a series of inaccurate articles in a lot of the Western media in the beginning. We finally have the New York Times and the Washington Post getting around to seeing the satellite images and discovering that they were wrong in their early reporting. I want to just go back for one moment to the nuclear question. When you said that Pakistan's deterrence basically failed, right? So a couple of things happened simultaneously. Pakistan, as you said, is bankrupt. They were running out of stocks. You write that in your Substack as well, that by the 10th, they were seriously short. on stock. So that was one. You also say, of course, that the entrance to the nuclear storage facility was hit. The air bases were devastated. Now, when you say Pakistan could not even protect its own nuclear weapons, and even the
Yes.
nuclear weapons were not an option for them, basically their entire deterrence failed.
Yes.
Can you
Yes.
elaborate? Can you elaborate on that?
Well, it is the same like with their UAVs, artillery rockets, and ballistic missiles. If they deny the use of nuclear weapons, then what's the point of having nuclear weapons? It's as simple as that. If somebody attempts to pull a gun and his opponent or her opponent stops him, prevents him from pulling a gun and actually shooting, then this gun is useless. And this is in this case as well. Pakistan was threatening India, with nuclear strikes and retaliation and red lines and whatever else. And India disabled this system, the Pakistan command and control system, and the storage sites to the degree where the Pakistanis were left without options, that they couldn't make use of their nuclear arsenal. Otherwise, and this was my biggest concern, they would have used it. But if you can't, if the entrances to the underground nuclear storage facility are blocked through hits by Indian missiles, then you can't go in and you can't pull these nuclear weapons out. And that means you can't use them. You could have 5,000 nuclear warheads inside that hill, and all 5,000 would be useless. That's the point. And this is, again, striking such a facility. Already alone this act is indicative of high degree of confidence in New Delhi that the Pakistani air defense system is already disabled and they cannot protect themselves. And if they cannot protect the nuclear weapons, then they cannot protect actually any other place in Pakistan. This is
you're saying that when India hit, when the entrance to Pakistan's nuclear storage facility was hit in the Sargodha complex, Pakistan could effectively not even use their own nuclear weapons because they couldn't even protect them. That is what that strike demonstrated.
Yeah. Moreover, don't forget, you could see this from Indian strikes on Bolari Air Base and what is the name of the Jacobabad Air Base, Shahin or something. Yes.
Yeah.
You could see that Indian Air Force has, by the time it was flying these strikes, establishing such a supremacy or such freedom of operation inside the Pakistani airspace that it could track in real time the movement of specific selected Pakistani Air Force aircraft. So an AWACS came down to Shahin Air Base outside of Jacobabad, landed, rolled right into the hangar, and minutes later, this hangar was hit by a I guess Brahmos or a Scalp EG of the Indian, fired by the Indian Air Force. Hangar was demolished, the aircraft was damaged, 5 officers killed, and over 40 officers and other ranks injured inside that hangar. So you see also this reconnaissance strike chain of the Indian Armed Forces, which is functioning obviously flawlessly because they could track this aircraft in real time. And you must keep in mind there must have been an aircraft or two loaded with weapons. You have to scramble them on time. You have to bring them, escort them safely to the Pakistani border, and then you have to supply them with targeting information. This is all complex processes which were processed by the Indian command system in a matter of minutes. The missile is fired, whether Brahmos in a high loft trajectory or a low flying Scalp PG, and boom, it hits the hangar and the aircraft is damaged, which means whether it's knocked out, we don't know, but it's damaged at least. That is what Pakistanis report. 5 officers killed, 40 others wounded. I mean, this capability, this is what is also denying the Pakistani nuclear retaliation, because Pakistanis, you should keep in mind, their armed forces, they know better than all of us together, including the Indian command of the Indian armed forces, how hard they have been hit. They have noticed if they move something, whatever object it is, from point A to point B, Indians are tracking this and striking precisely. And this is where, I said, this is like chess. Game over in 10 moves. You can't do anything. You are paralyzed. Whatever you do, you are hit. When you try to hit the Indians, or India, in this case, it's not working. So what shall you do? At that point, that was morning of 10th of May, it is not surprising that Islamabad has sounded for ceasefire, because they knew if this goes on for any longer, India is going to really debilitate the country. And I'm talking about actually going so far that India could have, theoretically, destabilized Pakistan completely. Because if you damage the Pakistani armed forces hard enough, the country, that is all the possible, all the theories about such an outcome of the war I've read so far are stipulating that Pakistan will fall apart. And this was also why India in turn accepted this offer for a ceasefire, because India does not want to trouble itself with 250 million of Pakistanis. Excuse me for expression. This might sound very brutal, very cynical too. But why trouble a country of 1.5 billion of people, India, with 250 million of Pakistanis, including dozens of thousands who are extremized and armed? So, let them do their own device.
Yeah, many questions there. But the big thing that you have said is that had Pakistan not asked for the ceasefire and had this continued, India could have totally debilitated Pakistan, given the military advantage to India at this stage in the operation. Now, my question is, we have India's defense minister today saying Pakistan's nukes need to be supervised. They should come under the IAEA. The IAEA has also given a statement saying there's no evidence of radiation. There was a lot of chatter after these reports came that the entrance gates to the nuclear storage facilities were hit, that there was some sort of radiations and the Americans were running to contain it, etc., etc. We now have an official statement from the IAEA that no radiation, there is no evidence of any radiation. Yes. So that's point one. And point two, our defense minister has said that you can't trust a country like Pakistan where the military attends the funerals of terrorists. And, we can bring that picture up as well. You would have seen it as well. What do you think about that? Do you think nukes are safe in the hands of an unstable country like Pakistan?
This is an excellent question. I instantly tell you why. For decades already, since the early 2000s, there is a low K or low footprint, or how shall I describe it? There is a discussion going on in the United States initially, and then in Europe as well, about the safety of Pakistani nuclear arsenal. Already back then, there were several studies, and they have concluded that Pakistani nuclear arsenal is not the least safe, that it could easily be overrun by such like the Taliban. And this related concerns about this issue even grew over the time, even more so once Taliban began attacking selected Pakistan military facilities. In one case, they have entered the base of sub 2000 AWACS and destroyed 2 or 3 of them on the ground. So this was making it clear, these nukes are not really safe. And it was quite early into this discussion that it was around 2004, 5, 6, somewhere around that time, that there was also a study, how should I describe it, stipulating that the United States, or more precisely the Pentagon, this means the US Ministry of Defense, has concluded they have to prepare a contingency plan for an assault on Pakistani nuclear facilities, or at least storage sites for nuclear weapons.
Right.
So, these concerns are serious. They're existing for 20 or more years, and they are even more urgent right now. But they are also showing that the government of India, the government in New Delhi, is aware it's better to stop right now than to destabilize Pakistan entirely. And then, you don't know who is going to assume the control over this nuclear arsenal. Why is this important? Because Pakistani establishment and the Inter-Service Intelligence Agency, the two are working together, obviously, but there are no solid bloc. There are also, so to say, groups between them. And nobody knows which of these groups is closer to which of the terrorist or jihadist groups inside Pakistan, and which would then, in the case of the country falling apart, who would assume control over the nuclear arsenal? Or perhaps somebody would assume control over one storage site and somebody else over another, and even worse. And this is where, when you talk with politicians about such topics, they are freezing. This is, the end game. Nobody wants this to happen.
Yeah.
And this is why it's better to stop at this point, even if I understand, I can understand why. Lots of Indians are disappointed by this decision, but it is important to stop because you don't know what happens after that. It's unpredictable.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is that while India had the military advantage very clearly and could have destabilized Pakistan, could have even declined the ceasefire, and many people in India wondered why the government had accepted it.
Yes.
One of the big reasons is the essential instability in Pakistan, that you don't want an unraveling Pakistan where the nukes fall into the hands of the terrorists. And while the Pakistan army is the patron in chief of the terrorists, there is still some capacity to track the nuclear facilities right now, which they may not be if they fall completely into the hands of the jihadists.
You could be sure right now Indian armed forces are constantly monitoring these facilities in particular all the time, 24/7, just to make sure nothing wrong goes on or happens over there. They are certainly monitoring, for example, repair works in Sargodha complex, and so on and so on. So, because this is, you can't joke with this kind of things with nuclear weapons. Nobody's joking with this. This is always taken, absolutely serious beyond any doubt. And especially in the case of such a cautious, such as conscious, really, Indian government and the top of armed forces like in New Delhi. They are certainly following very closely, whether with help of UAVs, satellites, combination of all the means, human intelligence in Islamabad, in similar places.
Yeah.
They're following the situation very closely, and I'm sure they're not sleeping very well ever since 10th of May.
Yeah, that's a really important point. But, towards the end, Tom, I want to go through some of the very granular details that are available in your writings as to what happened with which airbase. And I'm going to ask for either the sat images or the videos that we have to come up now. Now, one of the things you write is that Pakistan's HQ-9 battalion, which was deployed for the protection of Karachi, was badly damaged, right? And this is so important because in the middle of reporting on this conflict, at one point, we heard from sources that the Navy was targeting Karachi, and we didn't know more. And now we know, and I think we know also from your writings, that the HQ-9 battalion deployed for the protection of Karachi was damaged enough to not actually surface for the remaining part of this 4 to 5 day war, as it were. Then you go on to say that several Harrops from India hit the headquarters of the Pakistan army in Rawalpindi. You say Noor Khan was hit. We already know that. And a C-130 Hercules was set on fire. Bhulari received at least one direct hit on its main hangar, killing a squadron leader and injuring 14. And you've already spoken about Jacobabad. So there's a lot of granular detail here. Talk a little bit about what you think happened in Karachi with Pakistan's air defense.
Okay, in regards to Karachi, this is one of the places I strangely have no direct sources on the spot. But I can assess what has happened over there, which is that within frame of this operation against the integrated air defense system of Pakistan, India has targeted one of the HQ-9 battalions defending the city, and this received 2 or 3 hits, whether by Harrops or by Scalp, e.g. Land attack missiles. And now Pakistan was monitoring, this is what I know now to further research, Pakistan was monitoring the deployment of the carrier battle group centered on aircraft carrier Vikran. And this was moving, zigzagging from Indian coast towards Karachi, then back to Indian coast, then towards Karachi. And then Pakistanis felt obviously under threat. For them, situation was clear. Their air defense system of Karachi was disabled, and now comes the Indian carrier closer to their coast, which meant, most likely, this is assumption, that the Indian Navy is going to strike us next. From what I've heard in this regards is that the Indian Navy was ready to strike, whether with BrahMos missiles or with MiG-29s launched from the aircraft carrier and then to strike with their own weaponry. But it has even supplied or provided a detailed plan for such an operation. But it turned out this is not necessary, so this was cancelled. But obviously, Pakistanis felt under severe threat in this regards as well. They had to expect that Indian Navy has the capability to impose a naval blockade of Karachi, which would collapse the Pakistani economy, which would then be one of the red lines Islamabad has announced. But they still had no means to defend themselves against this. They were witnessing on their own, especially Pakistani generals, how part by part, piece by piece, their defense system is collapsing. It's not neutralized. It's hit. I say again, Indian Air Force and Indian Armed Forces didn't hit everywhere in Pakistan. The numbers sound very big and so on, but actually they were striking carefully selected points, which really hurt Pakistan very badly, like this hangar, like this command center, like nuclear storage facility, like HQ9s and HQ16s, and so on and so on. So this was speaking a very clear language for the Pakistanis. They were watching, the work of 20, 30 years of building up their military power falling apart like a house of cards. And they couldn't do anything about this. Again, Pakistanis, you should keep in mind, I have enough contacts in Pakistan to say this, and this for decades already. They do not know what the word capitulation. They cannot even think about this. They cannot even now comprehend what kind of a defeat their country has experienced. They're either not communicating with me anymore because of my posts, or some are sending me really offending posts, or at least trying to offend me. Because they feel offended that I came to the idea that Pakistan was defeated. How can I write such things? The point is, they cannot understand this. They cannot accept this. And moreover, their own prime minister has announced a victory. So how comes now that then some Austrian there is declaring them for defeated? This is absolutely incomprehensible to them. They therefore expecting them to just give up and call New Delhi and say, could we have a ceasefire, please? That is, this is also coming as a surprise. I wouldn't have expected Pakistan to do this, but they did. And if they did, then they had a good reason for doing this. Yes,
they had no option.
They had no option. Yes, game over. I said game over. Simple as that.
Yeah. Let me ask you. In the end, the Prime Minister has pretty much effectively announced a new security doctrine for India, and that doctrine is another terror attack equals kinetic action. Right?
Yes.
Now, I want you to give me a sense of what this might mean. Going forward for the region, that the world should understand, because Donald Trump makes a lot of off-the-cuff comments like he was responsible for brokering a ceasefire. India has rejected that flatly, and you have explained in very detailed, granular military terms why the Pakistanis had to ask for a ceasefire on a day, by the way, that they tried to send a missile somewhere in the direction of Delhi. It was intercepted 200 kilometers away. I was on the ground in Jammu, and drones as they were intercepted by India's air defense. The debris of that was falling in residential colonies.
Yes.
One of the other points that you made in your writings that sorry, could we come out of that? The sound is distracting me. One of the other points that you made in your writings that we haven't spoken about is that Pakistan started targeting places of worship, cities that home to, like Amritsar, home to the Golden Temple. Could you talk a little bit about that sort of panic that we saw in Pakistan, where, this is the Gurdwara in Poonch that was hit by Pakistani shells?
Yes.
Talk a little bit about that.
Well, for example, Amritsar, it is a famous place. It's well known outside of India. And this is a holy site of the Sikhs.
Yeah.
And when Pakistan it's an indication of military weakness, of inability to strike back up on India. They have figured out they cannot hit military facilities. They cannot hit air bases, or at least not reliably, or not to sufficient amount hit military bases. So, then switch tactics. Let's strike civilian targets. And this didn't work either, because the Indian air defense system was still powerful enough, numerous enough to protect also such sites. Why were they striking Amritsar? For a simple reason, they are trying to cause sectarian unrest. We know that there was an insurgency of the Sikhs for almost a decade or even longer. So they are trying to instigate something similar to provoke the Sikhs into turning against the government in New Delhi.
Yeah.
Actually, again, this is a sign of Pakistani military weakness, nothing else. Because if they are capable of striking at the Indian armed forces, then they wouldn't need to strike civilians. It's as simple as that. Excuse me, what else did you mention? The new strategy. It's a very clear, it is crystal clear language in these regards. And I hope that this government and the future governments in New Delhi are going to stick to this strategy. Because what we have, especially here in the West, for decades already, are governments which are babbling around, all the time, promising a lot and delivering nothing. You have seen this with Red Line by Obama in Syria. What happened? Nothing. And Trump now, this is an egocentric on an ego trip. Nothing else. He's claiming everything for himself. He is the peacemaker. He is a deal broker. Sorry, he is he is in charge and blah 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 blah. Excuse me, really, but best will. I knew that Pakistan has called New Delhi on the hotline before there were any kind of news about U.S. involvement in negotiations. So, in best case, I could assume that Islamabad called Trump. Trump told them, "Why should I care about you?" Before somebody else corrected him, and then he become involved. But that was already hours later, and then it was too late because Islamabad already had no other options but to call New Delhi. So, what is Trump claiming? Excuse me, I'm not even listening to all of his reports and all the media reports about him or his statements. This is so pointless. It is tragic what is happening with our politics in the West.
Absolutely. I'm so glad you put that into context because a lot of Indians are just so irritated to hear Donald Trump make this point, not once, but like literally every day. And as you mentioned, Pakistan was left with no option, no military option, but to dial India and ask for a ceasefire.
If you permit me, just
Sure.
I hope I didn't understand you wrongly. I'm an Austrian, so Donald Trump is not my president. Although
I know. I didn't say that.
But okay, just to make sure. But our Austrian government is not much better. Don't worry.
So let me end with that final question. What do you think the West and the Western media hasn't understood about this operation?
Nothing.
They've understood nothing?
Nothing. Because if you check the CNN appearances, for example, CNN reports, Pakistan done this and Donald Trump and Islamabad and nobody's even talking about New Delhi. If you check Reuters, the same. If you check New York Times, there was just a little bit damage and it was nothing serious. Hey, hello, nuclear power has sued for ceasefire. How do you think this is happening? Because you have seen five satellite photographs and these are showing 5 holes on some roofs. This is not happening by accident, but this capability to analyze, to neutrally analyze, soberly analyze and say, I don't care whether it's Russian or Chinese or whoever weapons used by this or that side. Let's see what are they doing with this weaponry. And let's see what are the results of that weaponry and how are they deploying it. Are they skilled in using that weaponry or not? This is what matters in my profession. And I'm telling lots of people things they do not like to hear. I'm sorry for that, but this is my job to tell them such things. I'm also telling Indians regularly things they do not like to hear. I was severely critical of India, even as of 7th of May. And I told this strike on terrorist camps, yes, wonderful, nice and great, but you should have hit Pakistan with all your military power instead of striking straight at only the terrorists. Because you are nice guy, this is nice for you, but in grand total, this is not helping your country become safe. What helps your country become safe is hitting Pakistan so bad that they are remembering this even in 30 years from now. And this is what has happened now.
Well, eventually it happened because your first part of your Substack did make that point, but by the second part, the operation had shifted quite substantively. And as you said, Pakistan had no option but to ask for a ceasefire, and the Western media has not understood. Literally,
they're not paying attention. They're ignoring this fact. It is okay. Let's accept the official stance from CNN and Reuters and similar instances. Nothing happened over there. Let's continue business as usual. I said, a squirrel. Look, a squirrel.
Well, it is galling. I'm laughing right now, but I can tell you Western media is just absolutely galling. We thank you for adding much needed perspective, information, and really granular research, Tom. Hope to connect with you again soon. Learned a lot from you. Tom Cooper, one of the world's leading war historians on our program. Thank you, Tom. Take care. Stay safe and see you soon.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your attention as well.
Bye-bye, Tom.
Bye-bye.
It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.